Okay, so that's probably one of the first ones, right?
I mean, definitely early. I think we're videoing you right now.
4 megapixels.
Yeah, shot.
That's actually not bad, though.
Not
that's
bad
enough
at all.
to make a good photo, isn't it?
I think
Are you
so.
filming right now?
Yeah, we're filming.
Oh my God, look at us.
We're like, whoa, what's this?
Welcome back, everybody. I was on my way to a holiday party tonight, hence the tree. I got there and realized the party is tomorrow night. Such is my life. But the upside is we get to review a new camera tonight. Tonight we are speaking about the Canon G2, legendary camera made famous by Sophie Lee of Digicam Love, who I interviewed on this channel, as well as Lucy Lumen, who also reviewed this camera when I sent it to her for her birthday. This is a camera from 2001, as you heard in the intro, a 4 megapixel camera. It does have a 1/1/8 inch sensor, a CCD sensor, of course, 2001. We are at the very beginning or near beginning of the PowerShot lineup. Very different from the PowerShots of today. I mean, not that they're making new ones, but the last generation of PowerShots were kind of boxy, but not like this boxy. And I happen to absolutely love the form factor of this camera. It's very, chunky and feels solid in the hand. It's well built, even though it is plastic and all that, but it really does hold up in this day and age. I've actually bought a handful of these. I've had quite a few, and they've all been in perfectly good operational order. So it was made to last, kind of. It has a 32 to 104 millimeter equivalent lens with an f2 to 2.5 aperture on it, making it nice and fast, or certainly relatively fast for this era. You can switch on, into playback, etc., etc. It pops off that little lens cap here, which just dangles to the side. I don't know, I kind of don't love that. I wish it was built in, but they were trying to be cute, I guess. It is slow to shoot. There is a shutter lag that is probably one of my biggest pet peeves with this camera. It is slow to write to the card. That being said, it's actually, of all the cameras that I have shot of this era and, in this range, it's actually one of the faster to write to cards. So I can't really fault it for that. But if you want to do like long exposure, there's no option to turn on or off the hot pixel erase sort of functionality of it. So it will sit for like 15 seconds trying to like make sure there are no hot pixels. Once you have shot an image, if you want to look at it in playback, you have to switch the whole camera over to play on this dial, and that is also very slow. It just slows the whole thing down. If there was a headline on this camera, it would be slow, slow, and then slow, slow. Yeah. So it has ISO 50, 100, 200, and 400. It caps out at 400. It also has auto ISO in here. You will notice the noise levels do definitely climb up there pretty quickly. ISO 400 being a noisy image, but a good noise, like a good classic digital funky noise. Doesn't bother me. The only thing that does bother me is you do start to get loss of detail at those upper echelons of the ISO, but I shoot it largely in program mode and I just let her rip. For what it lacks in ISO range, it certainly makes up for with one of my favorite features of this camera, which is the flash. It is a awesome, powerful, poppy flash that makes this my favorite camera to use with and for flash photography. In addition to the flash on the body, it also has a hot shoe for you to add additional flash, like an EX480 or anything like that. That just makes this a pretty great flash powerhouse. So if you're into strobes and all that, this is a super, super fun camera to shoot with. It has what is also kind of wild to me for the time, but when I look back at all these old cameras, I'm always surprised by some of the things they were already doing in 2000, 2001. It has a fully articulating screen. So this screen can close up like so, and then fully articulate around and give you live view while you're shooting, which is pretty awesome and somewhat handy. It does shoot RAW and JPEG, which is wonderful. However, it does not shoot RAW and JPEG simultaneously. So you are gonna have to pick which one you wanna use. I absolutely recommend shooting this in RAW. I like the JPEGs. I actually think the color is really good on this, but just because of the JPEG engines of the day, the technology of the time, it's just not gonna have as much sharpness or detail as you can get from the RAW file itself. The RAW files on this though are so great. They're really malleable. They take to color wonderfully, and I'm super happy with the results that I get out of the RAW files on this camera.
Say no more. Say nothing at all. I will carry you till my wings fall off. And I will not let you go. No, I will not let you.
A funny little detail is the back of the camera. So it has a viewfinder. It is a pretty lackluster viewfinder. You really don't see much of anything. It will zoom with the lens, but it's really just for framing purposes. There's no parallax correction. There is at least some lights though. There's a green light, yellow light, or a red light, just to indicate whether you have focus, whether it's too slow, or it's requiring you to use flash, or it's just not acquiring focus. So those indicator lights are helpful, I must say, but it is a pretty rudimentary viewfinder. That being said, there is a diopter on the side, and when I got this camera, I was very confused because I thought maybe something fell off, but it's actually just the design. This diopter is just like this weird naked lever right here. It's not broken, you're not missing some sort of piece, it's just how it was designed. It's just it looks weird to me, but it works. It has all your modes and dials as you would expect, PASM, then it has, sort of your auto modes, your portrait mode, your landscape mode, your like weird art color filter modes, whatever. I don't really use them. It has, matrix metering, spot metering, and center weighted metering. I do very frequently shift between matrix and spot on this. It is old digital. You do want to use it like slide film and meter for the highlights. You can always lift your shadows. Yes, there will be noise, but that's part of the joy and thrill of digicam photography. It is very imperfect, and that is why it's awesome. But yes, meter for your highlights because they will not be recoverable. And this has a pretty good meter in it. What it lacks though is good autofocus. The autofocus on this is very unfortunate. It is slow. It's a little inconsistent. Generally speaking, it's fine, but this is not a camera you want to use in any sort of fast action capacity. Not to say that it can't be done. I actually didn't know this for the longest time of having this camera. It's like, there's no manual focus mode. If only I had a manual focus mode. Well, there is one. Every button on here is like on the top or on the back, except for this one. This is a manual focus button. If you hit it and then go into your menus on the back, you can dial in your manual focus. Upside is it is displayed in feet and meters, so you get a sense of the distance. There is a sort of expanded macro view of what you're focusing on here, but it is imprecise and the screen is pretty crap. So when you go into manual focus mode, cool, you're shooting whatever. If the camera goes to sleep or you turn it off, it's not gonna remember where it was last. So you're gonna have to reset it again. That is annoying, that is frustrating. All in all, I would say don't think of it as a precision tool in any way, shape, or form. In the instance of focus, you're gonna wanna go with a deeper depth of field to cover your focus potential inaccuracies. So, an f5.6 and f8 on this size sensor is gonna have you plenty covered, even less than that, frankly. There is no live histogram in this when you're shooting, but that being said, as soon as you've taken the shot, you might want to just go into playback mode where you can get a histogram and see that all your information is within range. I don't do that frequently, but when there's an image I'm a little bit more attached to, let's say, I will definitely check that just to make sure. The lens is really sharp. It is really nice. It has a good deal of chromatic aberration, so you are going to keep an eye out for that. On the wide end, quite a bit of barrel distortion as well. All very fixable in post, or I just say, who cares? And I just roll with it because it's kind of part of the joy and charm of these old digicams. They always have these internal batteries to these cameras that keep the date and time clock going. And the likelihood is that the internal battery that these cameras have to keep the date and time clock going when the physical camera is turned off is probably no longer working. So every time I turn this camera on, I do have to bypass the menu asking me to set up the date and time yet again. I'm not gonna do it every time because it literally won't remember it from one on session to the next. That happens very frequently with these old digicams, and it's something you just have to kind of accept unless you're fortunate or brave enough to go in and try to replace the internal battery, which is like a whole other thing that I don't really get into. And as you saw at the beginning here, there is a video capability on here. It's like 480. It's really crappy video, but I actually think it's super fun and nostalgic. It maxes out like 10 or 15-second clips. You're not gonna go very far with it, but it's just a fun added bonus. Another thing that I love about this camera, it does separate the CF card from the battery, which I don't know. Cameras today, a lot of cameras today still don't do that. The Nikon ZF that I just reviewed has the SD card and the micro SD in the battery compartment, which I don't love that. It just bothers me. I love it on the side. Here is a compact flash card, which is the memory that this takes. You can take this front ring off here and attach an extension tube of sorts that allows you to include filters. They made a wide angle, a telephoto, and a close-up filter, and you just needed to add that attachment here. It's hard to find that attachment now, but and I can't attest to the quality, but AliExpress does have the extension sort of tube that would allow you to attach all those filters and additional accessories on their site for like $3. So I'll put the link to that down below. And that just expands the capabilities and ability to experiment with this fun, already crazy and wacky camera. And that's kind of it. It's a short and sweet review because there's not a lot to it. This is 2001. They didn't have a ton of capabilities built in at this point, but what it can do, it does quite well. I really enjoy it. Do I recommend it? I do, I really do. Now, I feel like there's been a lot of hype around this camera. The G2 model specifically has kind of garnered a lot of attention given, the folks who have used it. There are plenty of other in the lineup of G PowerShot cameras that are also wonderful. What has been most noted to me from the audience as I've been shooting this has been the G6, which I happen to also have and have not reviewed yet, so maybe I'll pull that out in the future. But the G6 is also really well known and people really love the JPEGs out of that one. So I don't want to speak to that myself yet because I haven't really tested it extensively, but it's also a super wonderful camera. I do love the raw files out of that. I've played with them quite a bit. So I can say very happily that any of the G series up to like the G10, when they switched over from CCD to CMOS sensors, are all super wonderful. They are different. They are different. People ask me this all the time because G9 was one of like my first entry cameras to photography. The images are, I don't know, there's something different about them, and I actually do prefer the earlier models myself. It's all so subjective. I highly recommend it if you want to have a fun, playful time with a camera. I also highly recommend when you get one, if you get one, just stick with it for a while. Don't shoot anything else. Just work within the limitations of the camera and get to know it, because that's where you start to unlock its potential and where you actually start to have fun. I am a big believer in limitations. It's why I started this project to begin with, just to force myself to shoot with one camera. And here we are 2 years later. I love it. It's been so much fun. And yeah, I can definitely say that this is one of those cameras I've really enjoyed, love the output of, and hope you will too. Those are my thoughts. And yeah, I'm just repeating myself now. So time to go to bed. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
sleep on